Hello everyone, welcome to the moment. Welcome to EFA175. Today in Ottawa we have three gentlemen here from London, Ontario. We have Demetre,
Hello.
Paresh, and Nick. These gentlemen here, these fine gentlemen, came into Ottawa today to participate in the march, the Integrity March. And this is it's about gun. It's about gun ownership and honorable, respectful gun ownership. And I want to go and I asked you guys today, Demetre and I go back over a decade now, probably, right? Demetre and I go back in the professional clinical space. He's a pedorathist by training, by education, by training. You're also a trainer. You're also a businessman, entrepreneur. You are part of the integral part of the fabric of London, Ontario, right? As a businessman, that's where it's understand. I've known you, like I say, for well over a decade, and every time I've known you're a hard worker, very hands-on. You're known as a mentor in the industry, and you have a very professional demeanor to yourself. And again, I've known you professionally, and I've known you outside of the professional office, and I have a lot of respect for you, right?
Thank you.
And I asked you when I knew you were coming here, and I asked you let's have a conversation, an organic conversation on guns. I've never been a gun owner. I don't own a gun. And the reason why I asked you, and Paresh and Nick, and I want this to be an organic conversation, and the reason why I asked them to do this today is because me, myself, and I speak personally, and in my 54 years on this earth, and I look at any single soul that I know personally, professionally, family, and every single one of them that owns a firearm of any type, professionals, members of societies, people that participate, people that give back, people that are the integral fabric of Canada, US, and around the world. And when I look at all the laws, and I look at the struggles of you guys pay taxes, right? And just before I get into the nuts and bolts here, Paresh and Nick and Demetre, just give me a bit about yourselves, and then who you are, like who you are, family man, businessman, life, whatever. And then I want to, that's why I want to go into, and I want you to educate us, right? And in conversation and where we are today when you look at what's happening in this nation, in Canada. We're talking about Canada here, but it's affecting the world. And a lot of this mindset, as we all saw with COVID, there's a huge synchronization. And what's happening in one nation, it could be in Australia, it could be in England, seems to be happening in ours, right? You can just replace the name of the person and the name of the city, it's the exact same situation. And this is what I want to talk about today. So Demetre, Paresh, and Nick, start with Demetre. Tell about yourself.
That's broad. Where do I start? Yeah, born and raised in London, been around Ontario doing work as well as you and I have been in the medical community or the allied health community. I own several businesses. Small, nothing large. Deep into the firearms. I'm proud to be born with a firearm in my hand through my father for hunting, being an outdoorsman. I recently, in the last few years, got into competitive pistol shooting, which deepened my understanding with the firearms laws and things like that. That's where I met Paresh and Nick, and that's what brought me here today to Ottawa in the March.
Very nice. Very nice. And Paresh?
So, I'm a businessman in London, Ontario. I own a great Canadian bagel. It's a franchise. I've owned it for about 21 years.
Very nice.
So my true
bagels.
So my true definition, people ask me, who are you, where you're from? So my true definition is I'm an East Indian by heritage, African by birth, and Canadian by choice.
Very nice.
So that is my true definition.
You guys felt that, and I know you did because I felt it. I felt no, it's nice. It's a nice flavor you just gave there.
Exactly, because I am here by choice. Because I love the country, and as a society, I love this place. Canada has been nothing, but it has an amazing society. Barring, the government and all that, which happens everywhere in the world, right?
But democratically, we are a safe, sound society as a whole.
Absolutely, a very caring society.
Care, absolutely. Giving.
Very,
right?
very.
And we saw with COVID how much we participate. We are a participating society. We do follow governance. Even though you might think we don't, if you look at statistically data, we do follow governance. Right? We respect our laws.
We follow rules.
Correct. We follow rules.
Today at the march, it was very amazing that, we had, I'd have to say, a little over 2,000 people. The walk was structured. There was no shouting. There was no obscenity. There was no nothing. Guys came, walked through the march, went back to Parliament Hill. No incident. No shouting, no
Nothing
abuse.
whatsoever.
You know, it was a very, like, it was a typical Canadian protest where, please, we are protesting against this. Thank you. We're sorry that we're protesting, but we are protesting.
Exactly.
So what Paresh is saying right now, and I really want to get, and I want to start on that. Okay, so Nick, tell me about yourself, and I want to tie back in because this is why this podcast is happening. And Nick, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm born and raised London, Ontario. I met these guys through shooting. It's the only reason why I know these people. I've met some of the best people I know from shooting sports. I'm just a working man, automotive service technician. Been there 18 years, and I work to shoot and fish and whatever I need to do. And I quite enjoy the sport. And the people around are great.
You know, and you're listening to three gentlemen here, right? And give your ages, for example.
43.
I'm 51.
51.
36.
36, right? I'm 54. Look at the age difference, right? You're almost 20 years span if you look at the age between us. And then what you said a moment ago, Paresh, about walking downtown, you went down Wellington Street by Parliament and etc. in Ottawa here, and you said you were organized and it was professional. That's who you are.
Absolutely.
Right? So whether I take you as individuals, whether 3 of you right here or 2,000 of you are still the same businessman. You still have a reputation to maintain as a person, as a father, as a member of society, just part of your DNA as people, right? And when you look at gun ownership in this country, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm not a gun owner, right? But what I do know in my 27 years of government and governance, when you look at regulations and enforcement and going to courts and that kind of stuff, I understand the laws very well. And when I look at regulatory laws and everything that's going on in this country, to get a gun in this country, it's not impossible, but there's a process.
Absolutely.
And a very stringent process.
And long process.
So, and people that have guns legally in this country under governance and rules and regulations have to meet certain criteria, correct?
Absolutely.
And a criminal, if they went through, they're going through the RCMP process and everything, right? So for the most part, they naturally filter out the people that should not have guns. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So you individuals have guns, correct?
Right.
You bought them legally.
Yes.
You went through the system. You met all their criteria.
Yeah.
Then they changed the law.
Overnight.
Overnight.
Yes.
Okay. Arbitrarily.
Yes.
Okay. Arbitrarily they changed the law. And then when they changed that law, because of what transpired in Canada, right? It was Nova Scotia, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
Correct. And with that, they came up with this law. And by definition, they define all these firearms, and all these firearms now you guys are in limbo. And then that limbo is if you own these firearms, and I'm going to get into who owns these firearms in Canada in a moment, but you own these firearms, but these firearms are identified. And right now you're allowed to hold on to them.
Yes.
You can't sell them, correct? You can't distribute them, trade them, or nothing.
Can't use them.
We can export them
You can export them.
to certain countries now. Now we just found that out. Again, we can get into that after.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can't, what did you say, Nick?
You can't use them.
You can't use them. So you can't use them, you can't whatever. But you bought them legally,
Yeah.
right? And you're not a criminal, correct? So you exactly. So you legally bought these weapons under Canadian laws, meeting Canadian laws and rules and regulations. And now, and I'm going to talk to collectors out here. Well, if you're collecting cars right now, or if you're collecting plates, displays, or you're collecting jewelry or watches, whatever you collect, guitars, it doesn't matter, underwater basket weaving, whatever you collect, imagine the law came out and identified every single one of your type of cars or every single type of watches, and they put them on the list, and all of a sudden they made them illegal. You bought them legally, your hard-earned money, your training, etc. And then we're going to talk about law enforcement out there. A lot of the people in law enforcement, and I know that for a fact, a lot of them own guns themselves, right? So in martial arts, when I used to train and when I was in corrections and the hand-to-hand combat and chemical munition, etc., that I took that into my personal life also, right? Because you want to take care of, you continue your training. Whatever I do professionally as my job, I also did in my personal life, right? So you said a mechanic by trade, correct? You in your personal life, you also take care of your being, absolutely, right? So like gun owners, police officers that work with law enforcement, that work with firearms, have firearms also in their personal life. They're also in the same boat in this country. Whether you're provincial, municipal, or federal law enforcement, you also now are on the same list as they are as it pertains to citizens that own firearms that meet these criteria, soon to be told what you're going to do with them, how you're going to dispose of them, what you're going to get for them, if anything. With 10 cents on a dollar, 20, you said there's consultants.
They say fair market value. Well, what's that? We're enthusiasts, so we have enthusiast type equipment, not just your everyday, cheap.
Yeah. So like a 1967 Charger, and it's fully done up. Fair market value is $4,000. That's 85,000 US probably, or 120,000 US. But the fair market value will give you 4,000. So correct me if I'm wrong, because I've been in a gun room. I've been to the firing ranges. I've shot just this Christmas. My brother-in-law in the U.S. in the Carolinas, Carolina brother there. I really enjoyed it. I had a good day. It was with his son, with his father, myself, and the four of us. And he entertained us. And there was some of the firearms that were there. I mean, like it was really cool, right? And I really enjoyed that day. It was a fun day. I taught a skill. I was taught a skill, right? And it's a skill, right? Whether it's archery in the Olympics, right? Whether it's a skill, and it's for hunting, for whichever, right? And so when I look at that, and I look at you guys as individuals, and your hobby is that, right? That's something you enjoy in life. No different than fishing, no different than running, no different than yoga. It's something you as your DNA enjoy in life, and you attain legally, responsibly by meeting everything, and now you were instantly, overnight, arbitrarily, almost made a criminal. Right? Borderline. You're staying. You own something right now that's identified. And this is what I want you to explain to me, like today, this March, and explain to me, if you were going to talk to them and educate people, I want to get into that, because it's a lot of things I know, I've learned that's really interesting, and I want to get into the nuts and bolts here. And 50% of my audience are women, right? 52% of my, so I have a really even split here, men and women, and I have the youth are also listening to me. And if I'm going to educate, because a lot of times we're going to look at politicians, they do things for votes, they do things to appease the people. And those, if you were to remember, equality for all is about knowledge, training, and experience. I'm either going to speak from knowledge, training, and experience, or I'm going to speak to those with knowledge, training, and experience. But it also has to be backed up by data and research. If I'm going to look it up, it has to be real, and I can back it up with data and research from those that actually walk those shoes, that live that lifestyle, that can talk about it tangibly. Right? And that's what equality for all is. And this is what this podcast, when I want you to educate them, and if you can listen to understand, these are the facts, right? These are things we're going to get into, and I want to educate individuals so you understand before you jump on a bandwagon of certain political platforms that are filled with holes, and the wheels are going to fall off, right? But they still get pushed through and they get voted in. And that's what's sad in this country. Right now, if you look at it across sea to sea, the people that have the weapons are not these weapons. The weapons that are used in crimes and drugs and et cetera in the big cities and the urban cities and that stuff are illegal weapons, right? And a lot of these, the Nova Scotia case, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't even think they've identified all the weaponry or everything he had, did they? Because I think there's still very gray a lot of that information out there. And why? But if we're in Canada and if they were obtained legally, right, we would have all that information, wouldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. It would come out in a second if they knew.
That's my point. So because and people will say, and why do you think they don't want guns? The government, the system.
You can speculate. On that.
Oh, speculate.
Do you want to go back to? We can go back to Mao. We can go back to Chavez. We can go back to Castro. Why did they not want their citizens armed? Control. In my opinion, control.
And we're seeing it in the U.S. right now, how much firearm there is out there, right? And if you look at the firearm, and in this country, in Canada, we are a democratic, civilized, following rules and regulations society. We talked about this before, right? And so, but now we're all being herded and pushed, the gun owners, into one category. You're all pushed into one category. That's always knee-jerk reaction, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, because every 20 or 30 years, something like this happens, right? Every 10, and they have this reaction. The incident in Montreal, that was 19...
I think 88, 89?
86, around that. And, the Polytechnic,
Yeah.
and it was all the female engineers, and I still remember that day, and I still remember where I was and that kind of stuff. One of the weapons that we used, it was a Ruger
Mini 14.
Mini 14,
Yeah.
and that firearm, and again I got educated on this in that Polytechnic massacre that was done by that firearm. That firearm, when they made that law back then, and they changed that law, and again a knee-jerk reaction, that firearm was not even part of that document,
No.
by definition. Not until this 2020, the new one with Trudeau, they finally put that on that, right?
They keep
The
falling for it, right? They kept saying about the Mini 14. They never changed the definition. They never changed the classification of that firearm. Since then until now was an unrestricted firearm.
And
Listen to understand what he just said. That massacre transpired, and up until 2020, that weapon was still an unrestricted.
Absolutely.
let's define for them that they don't know what a restricted and non-restricted is
Right.
in Canadian law.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead with the restricted.
So there's different classifications of firearms, and there's different licenses that we have as Canadians, or at least as Ontarians.
Yeah.
Well, it's federal, so we have what we call PAL, or Possession and Acquisition License. Okay, with the PAL we can purchase ammunition and non-restricted firearms. What is a non-restricted firearm? So that's classed by the government or the RCMP. They determine what is basically prohibited, or restricted and non-restricted. Okay.
So explain to them what the non-restricted is. So non-restricted is all your hunting firearms,
Majority.
shotguns, anything that's not deemed restricted is handguns are restricted. But so anything you could probably use for hunting is generally non-restricted. Shotguns were always non-restricted. And we have a barrel length.
It's all
That is
overall
what
length,
overall
length,
length
and it's all
of a
included.
firearm that determines whether it's restricted or not. So if you have a shorter barrel rifle, which they say that you can conceal, would be classified as restricted. Now the difference between a restricted and non-restricted. Restricted firearms can only be used at an authorized gun range, and it has to be an authorized gun range or a certified public range. Cannot be used anywhere else. Cannot be, and it has to be transported. So we have what is called rules of transportation, which is an ATT, right? Authority to transport. The rules on authority to transport is from my home, I can only take that firearm of the most direct route from my home to the range. I cannot open it anywhere in between. I cannot touch it anywhere in between. It has to be locked. Two locking mechanisms, one on the firearm and one on the case. It has to be generally in the trunk, not visible at all to the public. So let's say I'm driving from my home to the range. A police officer stops me for whatever offense, like maybe speeding or just a general traffic stop. And he would like to see what I have, and he would like to inspect my firearm. Legally, I cannot touch that case or cannot open it for him. He has to take the key from me and open it while I cannot lay my hands on it. That is how strict the rules are.
So, and these strict rules that he just defined for you, right, and that was well explained.
Absolutely.
The fire range themselves, don't you guys have to, when you join a fire range, that fire range, don't they go through also their type of training or orientation?
Absolutely.
Depending on the fire
Each range has their different rules or different training for.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've learned that because some ranges you have to meet their policies and procedures on top of that.
Well, and go back to the RPAL, or the PAL, the Possession Acquisition License. We go through a weekend course.
Yeah.
We write an exam. We go through a background check. And then we're issued our license to purchase a firearm. So let's educate again now. So to purchase a non-restricted firearm, whoever has a PAL can go into a gun store, an authorized gun store, and purchase that firearm. Okay, as a non-restricted, like a hunting gun, the shotgun that Paresh was talking about. Now, let's say I have my RPAL, my restricted possession and acquisition license. I have to go to a store, a gun store, a legal gun store, and I can't just go hand the money and take that gun, that firearm, and go home for restricted. We have to apply. So now we have the ability to purchase a restricted firearm, but we still have to apply for it. So I'll go to the storeroom and say, I want this pistol for competition. They write up the paperwork. They send that to the RCMP, or the Chief Firearms Officer. That goes through a review. They go through our background. They basically clean our background right out, and then they determine if we're, I would say, worthy of having now purchasing that firearm. Then we get a certificate in the mail saying you have the certificate. You can go back to the gun shop and take that firearm home. The same way Paresh said, in now a locked cabinet, trigger locked or locked on the firearm, from the gun store to the most direct path to your house and into your safe, or whatever the law is now. That's another definition. So I don't know how we got into that there, but that.
No, but it's so well to explain, because the people that are committing crimes, the people that we have firearm issues with in this country, are not the ones that are going through this process, are not the ones that are making the direct route to the. Do you know what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
We all know this, and this is where the public, and when you jump on that bandwagon because a politician tell you something, and then the same politician that tell you a certain thing and pass a certain law that doesn't even meet. Remember the whole polytechnic we just mentioned. They pass a law and it satisfied everybody, and it gave a lot of people a soother that wasn't even soothing, right? They didn't even identify the firearm. And a lot of this is, to some people, it's old news, but it just keeps rehashing. And then right now, we just went through the exact same thing, right? And across this country, law-abiding, responsible governance, regulatory following individuals are now have a piece of equipment that they're going to be told what they're going to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are more vetted daily than a pedophile or a rapist or a murderer is. Our names every morning or every day
Holding a restricted firearms license, we went through a system.
go through a system, and if we have committed a crime or an offense, more like an assault, we potentially can have our firearms revoked from us.
I did not
Every
know,
morning.
I did not know that. And when you just said about pedophile, like ding, 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 think about that. Think about that. Like I come from the background of corrections, and I ran institutions, and I've been part of the RIDE team, we call them ISIT teams, and I taught use of force and hand-to-hand combat and chemical munitions, and I was an instructor and trained a trainer. So I understand this world very well. And when you said you're more vetted than a pedophile, if that doesn't resound, right now, and again, law-abiding business owners, members of society, and they're more vetted than pedophiles, right? It's wrong. It's absolutely wrong, and it's because, again, a knee-jerk reaction for votes, and that's exactly what that is about. And it has nothing to do with the actual the people. And again, take away the gun, replace it with a car. Let's talk about weapons, right? They're going to tell you it's weapons. They're going to tell you it's mass killing, it's mass everything. And we had an organic conversation a moment ago, and we're talking about, if I look at Rwanda, and I've said this, you know, 1 million people got murdered by edged weapons, by machetes, basically, right? But not by guns. There was guns used, not that stuff, but it was mostly done by edged weapons. And a lot of the group murders, a lot of murders, that kind of stuff on this earth, and a lot of these terrorist type acts, a lot of them are done with edged weapons. Or, you brought up a moment ago, the vans, right, the vehicles. We've had mass killings with vehicles, right? And we talked about the analogies a moment ago, and if you want to go into that, like when you're talking about mass shootings and you're looking at vehicles, you know, and I like that. Go ahead.
Well, there's always an argument. There's always two sides, and each side is going to spin it, unfortunately, to gain the trust of the uninformed. So, as firearms owners, we know the capabilities of us and what a firearm can do. Okay, we don't call our firearms weapons because in Canada we're not allowed to use them as a weapon.
Anything can be used as a weapon.
Anything can be used. It's a tool. A weapon is a tool. I can grab a cane and hit someone, and that's a weapon. So in Canada, we are not allowed to use a firearm as a weapon for all intents and purposes. Okay, so what?
And that's important. I didn't know that.
We walk a very fine line as a firearm owner. I'm kind of moving away from what you talked about. I don't want to say we walk on eggshells. Not that we're constantly doing something wrong, but if we cross someone, or we get in a fight or an argument and someone charges you or calls the police, like that, I mean, gets flagged, and then the potential for us to lose our firearms is very high. So we want to be law abiding. We want to follow the rules to continue to keep our firearms and continue our hobby, whether it be collecting, performance shooting, competitive shooting, hunting. So we're very careful with that. And going back to...
Well, I hate to chime in back on the whole word weapons.
Yes.
When we do our interview, we have to call, there are some people interview us over the phone to apply for our license. And it was really, it's hard to say, but if you were to use the word weapon, because a lot of military use it as weapons in that interview, there was a really good chance that you possibly weren't getting your license. And that was what was taught to us in the firearms course.
This is not a weapon.
This is not a weapon.
And we keep that very strict.
And I respect what they're saying on that, and that's how you want to teach it, right?
Yeah.
And I'll guarantee you right now, there's a lot of people in the urban U.S. and in the cities that wish they had a weapon, right? And they wish they were armed, and I don't want to get into that, because right now we have people in the U.S., like we're seeing it, and I'm going to go back to the vehicle right now, because when you look at the vehicles, because the vehicle has been used as a weapon, right? The edge weapons, the knives and machetes, and the kitchen appliances have been used as weapons. Like if you look at all these murders, if you look at the explosions, a lot of the bombings, their pressure cookers, their kitchen appliances have been used as weapons of mass destruction. Okay? Fertilizer for farming and that has been used as weapons of mass destruction. Nails in hardware stores have been used as weapons of mass destruction. I can keep going on here. So when you're looking at the word weapon, right, from your kitchen appliances to your everyday vehicles to your agriculture products have been used as weapons.
And I'll answer your question. I won't stray this time. So going back to the analogy for as an automobile can be used as a weapon. So what the spin is, and I'm going to go back to the CBC and a media that's heavily, I hate to use the left and right and comment, but statistically more left, let's just say that. And there's a lot more to it. But a left-leaning media, or someone in that ilk, if you will say, well, an automobile was not built to kill people. True or false? Right? Okay. A firearm, its main purpose is to kill. That's what a lot of people on the left say. To us, for hunting. To us, we're not killing anybody as a competitive shooter. We're just not. We're shooting at paper.
Archery in the Olympics, the same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the spin that the media will put on it, and that will influence a lot of influencers on social media, is that a semi-automatic can kill the most amount of people in the shortest amount of time. That's the whole spin that gets people scared. The people that are uninformed about a firearm. But then you can look at a vehicle. Let's go back to the vehicle. An automobile was not built to kill people. It was built to transport us, correct?
Yeah.
But how many vehicles kill people per year? How many people die from a vehicle? More than a firearm.
The top 4 killers on this earth, right? Number 1 is water from disease and that. Number 2, number 3 is your environmental in which you consume. And number 4, I believe 4 or 5 of those top 5 is vehicular type incidents, right? Transportation. And
so going back to that then, so what's more dangerous right now? A firearm? Say in Canada, even in the States, a firearm or an automobile?
And if you look at statistics, firearms down there compared to all the, exactly.
So that's the spin they'll put on people. And it's fear-based approach to scaring people that are uninformed, ignorant, if you will, in a positive sense. That people don't know how a firearm works. They'll call, and it's the running joke amongst us in the firearm community, is it's a fully automatic, a fully semi-automatic firearm with a 30-round clip. All the wrong, and that comes out of the mouth of someone.
It makes us cringe just to hear that.
Yeah, even from a politician saying that on the news report to people, to the mass population. Everything they said about that is incorrect.
It's misleading.
It's very
misleading. It's dramatizing, right? And I want you to explain that, because a lot of the people don't understand how weapons work in that sense. Firearms. Yeah, I know. And I'm not a gun owner, and I said this in the beginning. And people will call them weapons, and that's because we are trained to call them weapons. If I look at media, you are trained to think that way. But those are not the firearms that are used in any of those crimes. If you were to lose your firearm, okay, any one of you would probably know in a New York minute, right? It's either going to be done for a break and enter, it's going to be done. You're going to know because you know where it is. All the rules and regulations you mentioned, all these, the walking an eggshell almost, because you don't want to lose your sport, right? You don't want to get caught in anything, so you know where it's locked and concealed and everything. And if it was to disappear, you would know something but array, right? And you would act on it right away. And that's why those are not the weapons that are being used in these crimes, right? And the ones that are used in crimes are the ones that come through borders, and the ones that are imported and exported through crimes and criminals and so forth. And it's not your law-abiding businessman, family man, business owners, integral members of society. I worked in a prison, and I say this to the people that have fun with and joke with, where it was a very rural country setting institution, and a lot of the individuals that worked there, beautiful souls, and let's call it, you would call it redneck if I was looking from the auto perspective, right? And I mean the French jokes. When I started, this is like 1991. Okay, it's like almost 30 years ago, and we have some boys in the background here. We're talking. And then this is 1991, and I mean the French jokes. I had more French jokes per hour than in my entire life, right? And it was, but these are beautiful individuals, family men, women, participants in society, like volunteers, community leaders, etc., etc. Families of families that are good people, and that's how I got educated on guns, and that's how when I understood hunting season. In that institution, in a lot of places on earth, hunting season was bigger than Christmas. I didn't hunt, right? So if I had my time off at hunting season, they would give me their Christmas season holidays. I'm serious, it's nothing the lottery. I could have sold that stuff. I could have sold the time off at hunting season, right? Because they value that. Because it was time away, it's a camaraderie. A lot of the women in that field and law enforcement hunt together. There's women hunting groups. Like, it was interesting, right? So I got educated. And this is what you mentioned a moment ago. If you don't have the knowledge, training, and experience, one of the things I've learned in my life is I learned when to shut up if I don't know, right? I've learned when, if I'm talking to a mechanic and I start describing my vehicle and things to you, when you start talking, I shut up because I'm not a mechanic.